my name is Rachel, and I wanted to introduce this little video project that we've been working on here at School Psych Podcast. I know that I see a lot of people in social media and Facebook groups and Twitter. At Psychs, we tend to kind of move around a lot sometimes. So I see questions being posted about, hi, I'm thinking about moving to this other state. Can you guys tell me a little bit of information about how things work? How does licensing work? What are you guys doing over in this other part of the country? So I thought it would be really interesting to maybe hear from our state associations and get some of that information and get you guys some contact information for who to talk to if you are thinking about relocating. And I thought that that would just be a really good resource. Ideally, I'd like to get all of the states. I've been reaching out through email and various other ways through social media to track down state representatives and people involved in your state associations. Haven't gotten a huge response back. At this point of this recording, I think we have 13 states who have submitted videos providing some of this information to us. So I'm hoping that this will be kind of the first draft of this project and that we'll get more states interested to submit some information, and we'll have kind of a resource library of just different state practices. So my hope is that this will be posted on YouTube. In the comments section, we'll have hyperlinks to each of the states. So if you're interested in a particular state, you can click on it and it should take you directly to that state. So you don't have to watch, how many hours of video and footage this ends up being. And that also, I think we'll try and put it on iTunes too, so you guys can kind of give a listen if you'd like. We're going to go through and just talk a little bit about some of the information that we're asking the states to provide, so you know kind of what's going to be included here. So I know that we're going to talk, we asked them about how does certification and licensing work, are credentials easy to transfer, and then also kind of is private practice available in the specialist level. Some of us like to kind of bridge out from our school roles there. We asked about salary range, cost of living, salary freezes. I think that these are all important things that we need to be aware of before we're moving to a new location. But I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca, who's going to also tell us a little bit about some of the other questions we'll be asking.
Sure. Also important to know about different states is whether internships are readily available, whether they're paid or unpaid opportunities, and how internships are generally set up in the specific state. Another question we'd love to know is how are applications usually taken? Is there a statewide system through the NASP website or other ways of finding out how to submit applications? Also the range of duties, the number of students in a typical caseload, and is there a shortage? What are the job prospects in your state? And here's Anna to tell us some other questions that we're looking for states to fill us in on.
Sure, we want to know about unions, if there's unions that school psychs can participate in, that's valuable. We want to know about relevant projects in your state organizations, any dues or conferences, any additional information you feel important, and ways to contact you for more information.
Awesome. So I'm hoping that if you don't see your state listed, maybe send them a nice email, hassle them a little bit, and tell them to get in touch with us and give us that information, and hopefully it'll be helpful to people out there watching. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Lisa from Arizona, and I have some information for you about our wonderful Sunshine State. Certification is pretty easy to get here. You would go to the Arizona Department of Education, need a letter from a university or credentials from another state. There's no test to take, and the credential can come pretty quickly, and they will do it by mail. You do have to have an Arizona Department of Safety fingerprint card, but you can apply for that online. You may need to be in the state to get fingerprints taken for the level 1 fingerprint card, but we can help you with that here at the Arizona Association of School Psychologists. So salary range, cost of living, things like that. Salaries vary quite a bit across the state. We are having a tremendous shortage. We have a lot of need in rural areas, and salaries can range. Usually we're on our own salary schedule or sometimes an administrator's salary schedule. So probably in the 40s is the lowest starting first year rate, up to 80s for experience. Most districts have a max of transfer experience, but you got to negotiate that coming in. And again, we have members who will help you with that process. Internships are almost always paid unless districts are in a pinch. Intern salaries range from $25,000 to about $47,000. depending on where you are. And let's see, applications for districts. We have a clearinghouse for internship positions, and that is housed, it's through the Arizona School Psychology Internship Fair every year. And so you can Google Arizona School Psychology Internship Fair, and our website should come up. For jobs, unfortunately, you kind of have to troll through all of the district websites, and we have many districts that are not unified. So we have some districts that are just elementary, and then others that are just high school. So for example, in the Phoenix metropolitan area, there's a lot of competition. So it's pretty easy to find a district that you feel comfortable in. Let's see, most districts have bargaining units, I guess, that include school psychologists. So sometimes we're our own bargaining unit, sometimes we're with the administrators, and sometimes we're a branch of the teachers' bargaining unit. But almost all districts have some kind of bargaining unit for our benefits, salary schedules, and things like that. Let me see, our state association of school psychologists is pretty strong. Membership is $75 a year, and that gets you access to the annual conference at a membership rate of $240 usually. It depends on what kind of speakers we've got that year. And that also comes with an abundance of regional trainings. We have 4 regions of the state and directors of those regions, and we do trainings throughout the year to get people CPDs for their NASP, NCSPs, and so forth. Ooh, I should mention, some districts pay additional if you have your NCSP. So some districts pay, I think the highest we have is maybe up to $2,000 extra on top of your salary for that NCSP. That's not widespread, but some districts do have that. Also in our state, you can, if you're working in a rural area, you can work as your own independent contractor and contract individually with schools instead of being a W-2 employee. So that's also kind of nice. So we have a number of practitioners that might serve 20 different districts in a rural area of the state, and they manage their own business that way. I'm trying to think what else might be important. I would say if you want to find out more about our state and you want a central person to contact, in our Arizona Association, we have a membership and professional standards chair that really is working on the shortages in our state and helping to make connections with out-of-state school psychologists who think they might want to move here, and connect with all of the lead psychologists. We have a network of lead psychologists in our state. And the name of that person is Wanda Fernandez, and you can email her at wanda.fernandez@aasp-az.org. I think this might be enough to get you started, but please feel free to let us know if you have other questions.
Question number 1, which is, how does certification or licensing work, and do credentials transfer easily? And is private practice available for specialist level? So in terms of certification or licensing, all of the school psychologists in California graduates from a master's program with a credential in PPS, which is People Personnel Services, through the California Teachers Credentialing Commission. And in order to get that, is you have to go through an approved graduate level PPS program and meet the criteria or the standards that they have set. We're actually in the process right now of revamping the PPS credentialing system in terms of the standards and the requirements for each of the PPS sections. So we're redoing the school counseling, school psychologist, and school social work. And so there'll be some changes coming. They hope to have it all set and finalized by December of 2018. Myself and our current CASP president, Dr. Alvera, actually were one of the 9 psychologists chosen to be on that task force. And so we have several meetings because their goal is to actually get input from school psychologists, school counselors, and school social workers. So when you graduate, you do apply for your credential, and then they give you the credential, allowing that you do meet all of the criteria from your program. And then after 3 years, you can choose to take what we call the Licensed Educational Psychology Exam, the LEP, and that will allow you to open up, or if you're interested in doing private practice, that's a requirement you need to have. However, an LEP is not a requirement to work in public education. All that's required is your credential. In terms of private practice available for specialists, like I said, as long as you have your LEP, you are able to open your own private practice. But you have to make sure that you're servicing students that are not within the district that you work for. And I think that's one of the ethics that we have even through NASP, if you are in private practice, is so that there's no conflict of interest. Let's see, question. I hope I answered that question. Okay, so salary range, cost of living, and salary freezes. We haven't had a salary freeze in quite some time. I mean, we had maybe about 10 years or so ago where we had that huge economic crisis where it really impacted school districts in terms of having layoffs, particularly teachers, and not hiring anyone. However, because in federal regulations, school psychologists are mandated or required, we were kind of protected to some extent in not being laid off for work. And so there were no salary freezes. I mean, there was a salary freeze, but since then it's kind of the pendulum has swung the opposite direction, and so we're back on track with that. In terms of salary range, it really depends on where you're working or where you live in the state of California. And regionally, there's some where if you work in a rural community, the pay may not be as comparable to a larger school districts. And so in Southern California, you know, LA Unified is one of the largest districts we have here, and their pay range is definitely quite different than it is compared to a small school district in the Central Valley. So it really depends on the size of the district. In terms of cost of living, most of the salaries are based off of the cost of living, and that's generally negotiated through the union. And so I'm probably going to skip around because I know there was a question about unions. Now, again, it varies in the state of California. In some of our regions, school psychologists are considered administrators, and so they fall under an administrators union. Some other districts, school psychologists are clumped in with teachers union, along with and together with the speech and language therapists and the school counselors. And in other districts, and in the 2 out of the 3 that I've worked for so far, we actually have our own union where we have school psychology. It's a school psychologist union, and we also have in our union the social worker. When I used to work for Stockton Unified, we had our own union, and in that union we had our school psychologists, school counselors, speech and language pathologists, school nurses, and child and welfare attendance counselors. And so really it just depends on where you're at. There are some, when we had our board meeting, our state board meeting, several of the affiliates were asking, how did you guys develop your union? Because we would love to have that, simply because our needs aren't always met, specifically under the teachers union that they are generally clumped with or grouped in. And so it's just a matter of how the district really perceives what your role is and where you fall under that. I do remember when I was working for Stockton Unified, that at least 6 or 10 years prior to being employed there, they were originally with the teachers union, and they were able to come together as a group and petition to be removed from the teachers union and develop their own union. So that's the difference here. It just really matters where, in what part of California and the region you work for. Okay, so number 3, internships, availability, paid or unpaid, and how are internships set up. Generally, in all of the state of California, we have internship positions available. And again, it matters on the district whether it is paid or unpaid. Sometimes what they do is they put interns on a timesheet versus being on a salary schedule. In other districts, they're actually paid. It's a paid position, and they start at the first level of the salary scale for when they do their internship. In terms of how it's set up, it's really the interns that are responsible for looking to see where internships are available and if that's the location they want to be at, and if that's the district that they would like to work for, and ultimately turn their internship into a permanent position. Range of duties and caseloads. It all varies. In some districts, psychologists are assigned 2 to 3 schools. We know that the NASP ratio is 1 to every 700 or so. I only know of one school district in our area in Northern California that has actually had their Board of Education agree to the 1 to 700 ratio for the school psychologist and student population, and I believe that's Fairfield Sassoon Unified School District. And so we were trying to say, like, hey, if they can do it, we should be able to do it too. We're not, I mean, we're a little bit bigger in student populations. Elk Grove actually has 64,000 students, and so we're kind of one of the top 10 big districts in the state. And but again, it just depends on what the budget looks like per district and within the SELPA. In terms of caseloads, it depends on the number of special ed programs you have on your site. So some sites might have 3 special ed to 4 special ed services or programs. And for example, at the middle school that I work at, we have 4 resource teachers. One who's an independent living skills teacher, which is for the moderate to severe population. We have an autism program, and we also have an adaptive behavior social skills support class, which is also known as our ED class. And so my caseload, my ratio, because I'm there 5 days a week, it's 1 to, I believe we're close to 1,000 students. So we're not only required to see special education students, but the requirements also is to see general ed. So it's the whole school that we service. So, I mean, if you think duties and caseload, it varies quite a lot. And with the changes about with mental health and how we are now, required, we're required to provide mental health services, that's added to our role and our responsibility, where we provide guidance and counseling to our special education students, but we also provide guidance and counseling to our general ed students if there's a need for that. So I already talked, yes, we do have a shortage in our state. I believe the last number I heard was that we're probably short at least 200 school psychologists statewide. And so it's a huge issue, and we are trying our best to really support our current universities with their programs to ensure that they continue to have programs and to be supported by the university, so that we will continue to have graduate students coming out of graduate school, going into their internship, and then becoming permanent psychologists. Are there relevant projects of our state organization. We have quite a number of projects going on. For example, one that we are looking into approving a position statement is about the Larry P. case. California, out of the 50 state, is the only state that continues to withhold, or we don't administer any IQ testing at all to any minority students and African American students. And so it's been quite some time that we have been trying to change that and to revisit the Larry P. case. And so we do have a position paper in the process of that. Another thing too is the whole dyslexia law that came about, and so it was passed in our state as well. And just like Missouri, we were lucky enough that we did have a school psychologist represent us in the task force, because, and the point or the purpose of having the task force is to develop guidelines per se of what it is that we need to do should a student be referred to us for dyslexia testing or dyslexia assessment. And so I believe the guideline has been finalized. And so we're also looking into what we can do as a state association in terms of what our position is. We're still looking, we're still really clarifying that, and so that we make sure to stay to our best practices and also within our ethics and our practice with evaluating. Another thing that we're currently working on is to continue with our mental health initiatives. And so we have our quarterly board meetings to keep updated with what's going on with mental health supports and services. We actually have one board member who's such an advocate for mental health that have provided and is on the state, I forget the name of the group, but they train school staff. It's called First Aid, and it's really to help them train about mental health and how to address that with students. Even if you're, a clerical worker in the front office, like what you can do should a student come to you with some form of crisis. The other thing too that we have in our state organization is we have different committees and groups that ensures to advocate for other to collaborate with other professions. For example, we have the Pupil Coalition Services. Basically, it's made up of school psychologists, school social workers, school nurses, school counselors, administrators, and teachers. And so that we meet once a month, every month, and we have someone on from the legislators, from the state capitol, who keeps us up to date with any bills that are coming up. And each of us as a group, we give our input whether we're going to support that bill or whether we're going to hold off and just watch the bill. So it's really to help us kind of know exactly how this will impact each of our professions and how we can help each other out. So it's really a coalition, and we either sign an agreement or a position letter to share with our lobbyists that are working with us to say, okay, this is something that they will support or they have questions about, so that if there's some changes that needs to happen, we have a voice in that. Let's see. In terms of dues and conferences, so the California Association of School Psychologists, we have student dues, which is a lot lesser, obviously, than regular full-time school psychologists. I believe the student dues are about 75 or lesser than that, and regular school psych dues are at least 135. We have one convention a year. which is held down in Southern California, but we also have a Spring Institute, which is always held in Northern California. And the reason why they did that is Southern California, but we also felt that it was important to make sure to give the opportunity for those who are living in Northern California to have access to professional development and training and workshops. And so we have our Spring Institute, which is similar to our convention. However, it's not as big in terms of the number of presenters and workshops. It's about half the size, but it's still pretty big considering that it's a Spring Institute. And then let's see, the other thing that our state association does is that we hold affiliate meetings and affiliate trainings. And so CASP, or our state association, is broken into 10 different regions. And within the 10 regions, we have smaller groups of school psychologists so that they too can hold their own workshops, professional developments that are also because for those that have their LEPs and even their NCSPs, they need the continuing ed units. And so affiliates are able to coordinate workshops and trainings so that school psychologists who can't always make it to our conventions or our Spring Institute has the opportunity to still attend workshops for professional development and to get their keep on top of their licensing requirements or their NCSPs. I think that's pretty much it.
Hi, my name is Emily Klein. I'm a school psychologist and the NASP delegate for Delaware. Let me tell you a little bit about my state and why you should come work here. First, let's talk licensing. Getting your license to practice in Delaware is easy if you have your NCSP. If you don't, you just have to make sure that you've met the course requirements for licensure as specified in state code. School psychologists are licensed at the specialist and doctoral levels for practice in public schools by the State Department of Education, but this license doesn't automatically qualify you for practice outside of the public school setting. So if you want to do private sector practice, you have to make sure that you've met the additional requirements through that process. That's also available in state code. If you're in your first 4 years of practice, you'll enter the public school licensure process on what's called the initial license. There's requirements for mentoring by an experienced school psychologist during those first 4 years, and you also have to pass your performance appraisals. Once you've done that and you've completed those first 4 years, you will receive your continuing license, which is renewed every 5 years. You need 90 clock hours during that time to be able to renew it. The good news is that the clock hour requirements or the definitions of what's considered a clock hour, they're pretty loose. So you can use a wide variety of professional development opportunities to meet the criteria for that. And also, if you have your NCSP and you're already doing the 75 credit hours every 3 years to renew your credential, you're going to have the 90 hours easily without any problem. Let's talk salaries. Salaries in Delaware public schools are paid through a combination of state and local funds, so it can be a little bit tricky at first to figure out what your salary is going to be. In order to figure it out, you have to add the contributions from the state and from the local school district, depending on the number of years of experience that you have and your degree level. The state portion is by far the largest component of your pay, and that amount remains constant no matter what district you're in. The local school district contribution is what creates the variation in salaries from one district to the next, but the amount that they contribute is much smaller, only about 30 to 40% of your total pay. School psychologists are typically considered 10-month employees and are paid on the teacher's salary schedule, which has some benefits in terms of union membership that I'll talk about in a second. The teacher's salary schedule is broken up into individual salary schedules based on your degree level. Your typical specialist level school psychologist should have enough hours to qualify for the Master's Plus 30 schedule, although some specialist programs do have enough credit hours involved that you would end up with a Master's Plus 45. There's also additional salary scale for doctoral level school psychologists or doctoral level teachers even. So that's nice. Some districts, one of the benefits of them is that they will allow you to count your internship year as your first year on the step scale. So if you're starting your very first job in Delaware and you happen to end up in a district where they count that, you'll start actually on step 2 instead of step 1, which is nice. A rough estimate of starting salary would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $45,000 to $50,000 a year. Cost of living in Delaware isn't too bad considering that we're on the East Coast, and it's a lot more affordable than some of our neighbor states. One of the benefits of living in Delaware is tax-free shopping. Delaware doesn't have sales tax on purchases, so the price on the tag is the price you pay, and I have to say that's pretty nice. Delaware's proximity to other major metropolitan areas and other states is also a huge plus. It's one of the reasons I stayed out here, actually. I originally grew up in the Midwest, where it's like a 7-hour drive to Chicago, and that's like the closest major city. Now I live in the northern part of Delaware, and I'm 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia. Within 3 hours, I could be at the beach, the mountains. I could be in Philly, Baltimore, New York, DC. It's fantastic. So we're super close to a lot of things. So if you like to travel, that's a definite benefit for coming to Delaware. The one drawback of that is that the proximity comes at a price, and that's our housing. Rental prices, like apartment rental, house prices can be a little bit more than what you might expect. Again, they do tend to be a little bit more reasonable than some areas or some, right outside of Delaware, especially if you're closer to the city. But price for a 1-bedroom apartment in the northern part of the state where it's more populous and closer to like Philadelphia, it can be anywhere from like $750 to $1,500 a month for a 1-bedroom. So that can be a little bit tricky. But I mean, it's proximity. The closer you are to a major metropolitan area, the more you're going to pay. Housing prices do tend to be a little bit lower in the southern part of the state until you get down by the beach, and then they get expensive again. But there is the middle part of the state that isn't immediately near the beach does tend to be a little bit more reasonable. If you're looking to apply for a job in Delaware, it's really easy. Delaware has gone to a centralized application system. So if you go to the website www.joindelawareschools.org, then you can apply for jobs across the state. You can search by region, by position, all that kind of stuff, and see what's available. So that makes it way easier to find jobs in the state now that it's all centralized. And you don't have to go to each individual district and look for their postings. Typically in Delaware, school psychologists are expected to engage in a broad variety of professional activities, including assessment, counseling, and consultation. The ratios of school psychologists to students vary somewhat across the state. The highest ratios you're likely to see is 1 to 2,000, but that's pretty rare. Most of our districts are somewhere between 1 to 1,000 and 1 to 1,500. Somewhere out there, there's been a rumor started that there are no job shortages for school psychologists on the East Coast. Au contraire, mon frere. We have, especially in some of our more rural districts, there are districts that have been trying to hire folks to come work down there for a couple of years. So those positions have been vacant. Sometimes if positions are vacant too long, then they disappear, which is not a good thing. In the northern part where it's more populous, that's where the bulk of the school psychologists are, just because the districts are bigger up there. There's usually at least one job posting even mid-year in one of those districts. So again, if you check out that joindelawareschools.org site, you can see where any job openings might be in the state. If you're looking to do your internship in Delaware, the easiest way is if you come through the training program for school psychologists here in the state at the University of Delaware. The faculty in that program, if you are wanting to do your internship in Delaware, they'll help you set it up. If you're coming into Delaware from an out-of-state program, you might have to do some calling around to the student services director or whatever that equivalent would be in the districts that you're interested in pursuing. Most districts in the state do pay a nominal salary to interns, usually somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000 a year. There are a handful of districts that do not pay interns, but those are few and far between. Most of them will pay you at least a little, like 15, 16K a year, which is nice. One of the benefits of being on the teacher salary schedule is that we're eligible to join the union. DSEA, or the Delaware State Education Association, it's a branch of NEA, the National Education Association. That's the union that covers public educators in the state. Being part of that larger collective bargaining group is really nice because there's not a whole lot of us in the state. There's less than 200 school psychs, I think, in the entire state. And so that's a very small group when it comes to like bargaining and salaries and all that kind of stuff. So having them have our back is a very good thing for us. That DSEA is also very influential in education policy in the state. So again, that's good for us to be involved in. They're actively seeking non-classroom based educators, are specialized instructional support personnel like school psychologists, to be involved in the union and to help be a voice and help guide policy. So if you want to get involved with not just our Delaware Association of School Psychologists, but that larger union, they're definitely very open and willing to have you come in and volunteer and to help shape the work that they're doing. I actually just found out that I got elected to the executive board as a representative from my county. So I'm going to be helping represent school psychologist interests as well as the interests of our students from our perspective on that board. So they're definitely someone who has our backs. So I mentioned DASP, a Delaware Association of School Psychologists, earlier. That's our state school psychology association. Again, since we're a small group statewide, our organization is fairly small. We provide professional development at least once a year, but we try to do a couple of other things throughout the year. Our main conference is in the spring in May. We have a really good relationship with the Delaware Department of Education, and that has really helped us be able to have an impact on policy. Delaware is such a small state, you can really have a major impact just by talking to the right person. So that's something that's really cool about being in Delaware, is that you can really make things happen here if that's what you want to do. We really try to keep our dues for DASP reasonable for regular members, a membership for the year, which runs July 1 to June 30th. The dues are $55. Student dues are $10 a year, and then retired member dues are $25. Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about Delaware. If you want more information, please feel free to contact me, Emily Klein, at eklein@udel.edu, or you can also reach us through our website, www.dasponline.org.
Hello, my name is Angie McKinney, and I'm the president-elect of the Indiana Association of School Psychologists, and would like to welcome you, hopefully lots of you, to Indiana and share a little bit about what school psychology is like in Indiana. So licensure in Indiana goes through the Department of Education. It's a pretty easy process to get through, but all licenses are handled there. School psychologists are licensed as a school services category. along with school counselors and school social workers. School psychologists hold licenses that cover preschool to 12th grade. There's also the opportunity for independent practice endorsement for school psychologists that want to practice beyond the scope of just working individually for a school system. And there's a lot more information on the Indiana Association of School Psychologists website about the independent practice endorsement. One great reason to come to Indiana, besides the fact that we do have all 4 seasons, so much that we get our fair share and fill of snow, but we also get springtime, fall time, winter. We have it all here. So when you get really tired of all those beach days or all those skiing days, you should think about coming to Indiana. The cost of living is well below the national average, and that goes both for our urban settings and our more rural settings. There are lots of different kinds of places to live in Indiana, and it's all relatively affordable. The average salary in Indiana for a school psychologist is right around $45,000 a year. Typically, school psychologists are hired in on a teacher contract or a teacher salary schedule. There are some variations across the state depending on whether or not school psychologists have an extended contract from the typical teacher contract, whether they might be hired in on an administrative schedule as opposed to a teacher schedule. There are also some districts that offer stipends, but it varies from district to district. There is no state set salary schedule of any kind that some other states might have. There are many opportunities for internships in Indiana when you're first getting started in school psychology, in a variety of different kinds of placements and districts. The internships are not at this point housed anywhere centrally. However, our association is beginning an internship clearinghouse through the IASP website that will reach out to local districts, administrators, to get them to post onto our system, and will also be available for universities to share with prospective interns, both in-state and out-of-state, about opportunities in Indiana. A lot of our internships are paying. There are a lot of opportunities to make some money while you're here for internship. There are some that are unpaid, but I would say more often than not we have paid positions available, and a lot of those turn into full-time positions. There are a lot of districts, when they're very happy with their interns, usually have an opening that they're also wanting to fill, and they filled it temporarily by an intern, and that turns into full-time work the next year. So great opportunities here. When you're looking for a permanent full-time position in Indiana, there are several different places that you should start by looking. One is on the Department of Education website, and this link will take you right to the job search, and it includes positions for teachers, administrators, as well as other school staff, including school psychologists. So that's a good place to start and look. You can also check the Indiana Association of School Psychologists website. A lot of districts will post those same positions for school psychology right on the website. So great centrally located information. The duties of a school psychologist are much like those across the nation, where it really depends on the district, and it depends sometimes on the school or the individual school psychologist. A lot of assessment still happening. A lot of us are spending a good majority of our time in assessment, but there are also many opportunities in districts for doing consultation, counseling, intervention work, working with MTSS within the schools. Just lots of places for us to carve out our niche and really get in there on a more preventative kind of end as well. We have some districts in the state that also have an individual school psychologist per building model, where that school psychologist is an integrated part of the school team and is there on a full-time basis. Most districts, you're going to find that a school psychologist will have multiple buildings within a district or within a special ed co-op that houses multiple school districts. And they're going to be serving a lot of different buildings. But again, there's variation out there, so depending on what you're looking for, there's probably going to be an opportunity to find that match. Is there a shortage? Yes, there's a shortage. There's a huge shortage in Indiana. It's definitely been an issue. There's a lot of contract work happening across the state, and we'd really like to reduce the amount of contracted employees around the state and fill those positions with good quality school psychologists. There are questions about the unions and associations across the state. Many of our districts still have teachers' unions or teachers' associations, depending on where you are, what they will call them. Depending on whether or not you are on the same kind of contract as a teacher or not, you would have the opportunity to join those associations at your individual districts. Some of the projects that our association is connected with, we have an incredible Indiana Association of School Psychologists. We employ an association management group that does a lot of work for us and helps to coordinate a lot of the efforts that we have as far as some of the big spheres that we want to have an influence in. And our association manager is a lobbyist that keeps us really up to date on legislation that we might want to be both aware of and have some influence in. Sets up opportunities for us to connect with other groups. Oftentimes our Department of Education or our local special ed administrator association will partner with us on different opportunities where we need to have some influence, where we have some common interests. So some of the things that we've been involved in, again, is the school psychologist shortage. And we have a task force that's been working on how can we increase the number of quality school psychologists in Indiana. A lot of work when it comes to legislative issues that come up. We provide professional development opportunities for both our members and our non-members across the state to make sure that we're continually growing as a group. And also we've had a lot of work with other groups who are continuing to see that incredible need for mental health support in our school systems. Our association has a fairly large fall conference and then also has a spring conference that is a one-day event and is usually offered via the web as well, so that some of our far-reaching members don't have to travel so far in order to be part of that. We also have regions around the state, and we have a region representative, and those representatives will put on locally based kind of trainings, professional learning opportunities that they open up beyond school psychologists even, to try and pull in that partnership aspect of working with everybody else who is also out there working for the good of students. Our IS membership is very reasonable. It's $95 a year currently, and it does provide a lot of benefits. We get a reduced cost or a reduced rate for our different professional learning kinds of opportunities. We also have access to some members-only content, some different trainings that have been recorded, other kinds of documents, and we get legislative updates on a regular basis that would be more difficult to go out and seek out all this information and synthesize it down to its key points on our own individually. So for more information, you can contact any of our members that you can find information for through the NASP website. But you can also contact Kim Williams, who is our association manager. She is not a school psychologist, but she is a key person in making sure that she gets you to the right person for the information. Sherry Davis is our current president. And then Angie McKinney, I'm the president-elect, and we're really hoping that you might want to know more about Indiana. Come for a visit, come to CEC next year for Indiana, and just find out what Indiana's all about.
Okay, hello everybody. So I'm here to talk about being a school psychologist in the state of Iowa. As far as credentialing is concerned, it is pretty easy to get credentialed here as long as you have gone to a NASP approved program. And we get credentialed through the Board of Educational Examiners here in Iowa, just like teachers do. We're a web-based program now, the application and all that stuff, and it's a little hard to navigate through, but they answer their phones there, so always give them a call. And if you're not from a NASP approved program, unfortunately, Iowa has in the recent past decided not to accept people from non-NASP approved programs just because they don't have the manpower to go through and do all the syllabus checks. So I'm sorry about that, but maybe that'll change in the future. All of our school psychs work in Iowa for either an area education agency, which is kind of like a cooperative, I would say, from other states where a bunch of districts are together. And then the AEA then decides which school districts you will serve. Except for the Des Moines public schools, they hire their own school psychs, but that's the only district in all of Iowa that hires their own school psychs at the moment. There's some trend that is sort of maybe changing and that districts will hire their own. But right now, AEAs are the only way to do that. And each AEA advertises their positions. So if you were looking for a position in Iowa, you will look at all the individual area education agencies. And you can look through the different AEAs at, I think, aeaonline.org. And there are 9 AEAs in Iowa. The Des Moines area is Heartland AEA. The Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area is Grant Wood AEA. The Waterloo Cedar Falls area is Central Rivers AEA. The Dubuque area is Keystone AEA, and Council Bluffs area is Green Hills AEA. So I think I just covered all the big cities in Iowa there. Salary range is upper 40s to low 50s to start, and then on through that way. There's a shortage all across Iowa, as other people have said also, especially in the rural areas, that is true. Internship, all of our first, you just apply to a school psych job. And that is, it's not advertised as an internship. It's just you apply for it and then you let them know that you would be an intern, and you get hired as a first-year school psychologist, and you get paid as a first-year school psychologist then as well. So it isn't like a stipend in other internship situations. And then they support you as well through mentorship and supervision and those kinds of things. Especially at Heartland AEA, which I work with quite a bit. They have group mentorship and things like that. So it's really nice, and other AEAs have something similar. Applications, like I said, are taken at the different AEA sites, but you can sort of start to get a sense for AEAs by just Googling Iowa AEA, and then the Google will bring it up for you. Here in Iowa, things are a little bit different than other states in that oftentimes AEAs don't advertise for specifically a school psychologist. Sometimes, I mean, a lot of times they do, but you'll see it listed as a building representative or team representative. And in that case, they would hire a school psych. That's probably their number one choice, is to hire a school psychologist, which is great, and we love that. But because there's such a shortage in Iowa, they will also hire a school social worker or a special education consultant in place of a school psychologist. So you kind of need to kind of look at the team rep or building representative sorts of jobs, and that would include a school psychologist. It probably says that in there. I want to make that clear. And we'd love to have more school psych coming to the state of Iowa. We have one school psych program in Iowa that graduates about 8 to 10 students a year, and so we have a huge shortage. Let's see, there are unions that school psychs participate in that are different from teacher unions, so that is possible as well. One of the things Iowa School Psych Association has been working on a lot is identity and advocacy, since we have such a shortage, and we have these other positions, schools, social worker, and special ed consultant, that do similar things to us, at least the special ed side of our jobs. even though we're trained very differently. So we're on identity and advocacy for school psychologists, and we're a growing association. We kind of lost a lot of members in the past, and our new president and I, who I'm the president-elect, are really working hard at bringing membership back up. We did prepare training last year. We're doing an ELL sort of summit workshop in the spring this year. So what's happening in our Iowa School Psych Association is pretty exciting right now. Our dues are $50, and then you get, you know, just like NASP does, you get dollars off your conference or workshop summit participation and admission fees. There, you can check out our website. It's at www.iowaschoolpsych.org, and there's more information on Iowa AEAs on there, and the different other things that we're doing, cool blog and school psych spotlights and fun things like that. And our emails should be up there as well. But if you ever have any questions, you can always email me at nicole.skaar@uni.edu. And we'd love to have you here. Thanks.
I'm Kyle Carlin. I'm a school psychologist in Kansas, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a school psychologist in Kansas. First of all, with our certification and licensing, this is managed through the State Department of Education, Kansas State Department of Education. Our interns work on an initial license that is valid for 2 years and requires supervision. Interns in Kansas do receive full salary and benefits in nearly all cases. Once internship requirements are completed, you can apply for a professional license, which is valid for 5 years. Kansas does not automatically accept NCSP for those moving to the state, but those I know who have moved from out of state have had no difficulties getting a license in Kansas. Specialist level school psychologists must work in a school setting and are not allowed to work in private practice, only doctoral level, which are then licensed through the BSRB. So, for salary and benefits, there is a significant range across the state, with starting pay ranging from $42,000 up to $69,000. District and cooperatives are also inconsistent in the contract length for school psychologists. Some work the same calendar as their teachers, which is about 180 to 186 days, while others will have 5, 10, or 20 days extra, which then the pay is prorated for that. According to payscale.com, the cost of living in Kansas is 7 to 14% lower than the national average. Pay scales have been frozen in most places across the state, but it has improved lately as the legislature has increased funding for schools in the last year. Internships are available throughout the state, and nearly all are paid, as I said before. Generally, internships are set up by the intern applying for an open position. The intern makes it clear through the application and interview that they will be an intern, and the district will determine if they have the resources to provide the supervision. Applications are usually submitted online through district websites or through a website that is set up by the state, kansasteachingjobs.com. That's where a lot of our districts will post positions and then accept applications through there. But some districts may use other employment sites or only post on their own websites. Duties in Kansas are generally focused on initial evaluations for special education eligibility, reevaluations of students receiving special education services, general education intervention planning and collaboration, and supporting special education teachers with IEPs, behavior plans, and other processes. Depending on the caseload and your own interest, you may also have opportunity to provide group or individual counseling, to be involved with system level operations, or to work in other capacities in your district or building. Caseloads vary depending on location, but the average ratio across the state is about 1,000 students per school psychologist. The shortage of school psychologists has been felt more and more over the last few years. Positions are open across the state, so prospects have plenty of choice when applying. School psychologists can join their local teacher unions, usually an NEA affiliate. In some districts, the school psychologists have their own bargaining group, which then works on their own contract separate from the teacher scale. The state association in Kansas is the Kansas Association of School Psychologists. Dues for that are $50 for full membership and $10 for student membership, and that membership runs annually from the day that you pay, not by calendar year. CASP provides a 2-day fall convention, a 1-day spring workshop, and then regional meetings that provide either half or full day trainings and collaboration. So there's plenty of professional development opportunities across the state provided by CASP. CASP also joins with the Kansas the Kansas School Counselors Association and the Kansas School Social Workers Association to put on the School Mental Health Awareness Day event at the Kansas Capitol. This event is used to advocate for students and necessary services. CASP has developed an evaluation tool for school psychologists and has worked closely with KSD on various issues. Currently, CASP is working on a comprehensive plan for addressing school psychologist shortages that will focus on retention, recruitment, respecialization, and restructuring. To learn more about CASP and school psychology in Kansas, you can go to casp.org, KASP.org, or email caspempowers@gmail.com. Thank you and have a good day.
Hello, my name's Dan Florell, and I'm representing Kentucky and the Kentucky Association of Psychology in the Schools, or CAPS for short. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview for our state if you're considering practicing here, and maybe an easy way to figure out how to come on over down to Kentucky. So I'll just go through these questions of how certification licensing work. Certification for school psychologists is through the Kentucky Department of Education. In addition to having a specialist degree, you have to pass the praxis at around the level of the NCSP, or Nationally Certified School Psychology credential. Now, as far as its ability to transfer those credentials, if you're coming from another state, it does accept the NCSP credential, so that's going to speed up the process. You still have to go through the Kentucky Department of Education. If you don't have the NCSP, it's not a big deal. It just means you're going to have to fill out the full application. And once again, that's with the Kentucky Department of Education. Now, as far as private practice, Kentucky is one of those few states that doesn't allow school psychologists who are credentialed through the Kentucky Department of Education to practice independently outside the schools. To do that, school psychologists would have to be licensed through the Kentucky Board of Examiners of Psychology. And more information can be found on that subject, because it's way more than we have time today, at CAPS, KAPS, online.org, which has a report called The State of School Psychology in Kentucky. And if you go ahead and click on that, there's all the information that you would need on how to become licensed in the state if you're interested in doing private practice. Now, the next question, of course, is what sort of money are you going to make when you get to Kentucky? Well, we just did a salary survey in 2015 as part of that report that I was telling you about. And the average was $52,485, or breaking down into $291.58 per day. Of course, that also includes pension and all the other benefits. Salaries do vary considerably depending on the region that you work in the state. So one region reported as low average of $47,500 a year, all the way up to another region, which is in one of our largest cities, of $85,453. So as you can tell, there's a fair amount of variability depending on where you're going to live. Now, the cost of living is comparable to most states that surround Kentucky, but it's a lot less expensive than if you lived in the coastal areas, like Pennsylvania, New York, California, Oregon. And so if you're from the Midwest, it's going to be relatively about the same standard of living. Now, as far as salary freezes, we've been fortunate in Kentucky to not really have that. All districts set their own wages, and they are set to increase based on years of experience on a salary schedule. So there's not been any freeze of that process. However, the thing that we noticed between our 2010-2015 surveys is that there's been a rollback in extended days. And so school psychologists have not been working as many extended days, which has decreased the salary a little bit. I anticipate, due to our shortages in our state, that that's going to be reversed soon. And if anything, it'll be you get as many extended days as you would want due to the amount of workload that we have and the lack of school psychologists to fulfill that. So I think that you may have an uptick in salaries as well as more positions go unfilled. Now, if you're considering internships, let me tell you, Kentucky is the right place for you. We're very unique in that we allow our interns to become provisionally certified as school psychologists. And what this means is they can be hired in a school psychology position along with whatever associated pay with that position. paid internships that are widely available. One of my jobs is working as an instructor in one of the specialist school psych training programs. Our interns routinely get paid in the mid to high $20,000 range. We've had it all the way up to $42,000 for one of our interns, and as low as about $9,000. But other than a little blip a couple of years back, almost all of our interns have had multiple offers, and they all have paid positions pretty close to where they want to work. Now, interns are typically applied school psych positions and then get approval from their training program regarding required training experiences they might need to have during their internship. So it's basically, there's no statewide kind of provision. Positions are typically at a local level. So there is a statewide system that posts all available school positions, not just school psychology only. It's called the Kentucky Educator Placement Service Program. And once again, the link is available at the capsonline.org website. So that's the main CAPS website that we have, and there's a link directly to that placement service if you're interested in kind of following the job situation. We usually see the uptick, right around May, June, July is usually when you see the most activity, though these days you could probably get a job at any point in time where several openings currently that you could get very quickly. The range of duties and caseloads. Kentucky's a fairly traditional state in regards to school psychological services. Of course, duties vary from district to district based on whatever they prioritize our time with. But based on the data from 2015, the report that I was talking about, school psychologists spend about 60% of their time in assessment-related activities, and then roughly 10% of time are allocated separately for consultation, intervention, and RTI process. So regardless of where you go, you're probably going to have more of an assessment focus than some of the others, though some that have maybe just counseling, just consultation. As far as the shortage, I've already alluded to that. There is a significant shortage of school psychologists in Kentucky. Anyone moving here is probably going to get multiple offers from school districts, and that goes across the state. I haven't seen any one area of the state where there are no openings. And so very robust, you would have plenty of opportunities. As far as unions, Kentucky really isn't a big union state for school districts. I'm not really aware of any. There may be one or two. We have quite a few districts, but the vast majority are not unionized. As far as relevant projects of what CAPS has been up to, our state association is really active given its relatively small size. We've always had a big presence in NASP, and we've most recently been working with the state regarding dyslexia diagnoses, which I know is a real hot topic. And we've been having an ongoing conversation regarding MTSS in the schools. And of course, this is something that we try to get very involved with governmentally. In regards to being advocates for children and then also for our own profession. As far as dues, CAPS dues for a student member is only $15 a year, and a regular member runs $80 a year. We have an annual fall conference and other subsequent trainings throughout the year, but the fall conference is the big one. It's 2.5 days, and that costs roughly about $350 for the 2.5 days, and of course you can break that down by daily rate too. Otherwise, something to know about our state and our state association, CAPS has completed a 5-year survey, what we call the State of School Psychology in Kentucky. Kind of mirrors the membership survey that NASP puts out every 5 years, and we've been doing that since 2005. So we have 3 separate data points now, and we've posted all of those reports on the capsonline.org website. And school psychologists, anybody who considering coming to Kentucky is going to find really a treasure trove of information in those reports. Basically, all I did to answer all the questions for this little video was to go to that report and just pull them all. It's all there, and many, many more. So as far as contacting people, once again, if you go to the capsonline.org and contact any of our executive committee members, we're all very helpful and would be thrilled to have you come aboard, as I'm sure our corresponding school districts would. So just reach out and we'd be more than happy to have you join us. Thanks.
Greetings everyone, I'm Annie Holmes. I am the Louisiana School Psychological Association's current president, and I'm coming to you today to discuss hirings and internships here in Louisiana. So the first thing I'd like to discuss with you all is how does certification and licensing work. So we are licensed, or certified actually, through the Louisiana Department of Education, and their website is teachlouisiana.net, and that is where you will find any forms that you need in order to apply in Louisiana. Credentials usually transfer pretty easily. You fill out a form, there's an application, a transcript that you need to turn in, your experience verification, a background check verification, and then a payment of $50, and then you are certified through the state of Louisiana if that all comes back well. Your NCSP also opens some doors for you. It makes the transition process a little bit easier, and when you go to renew with the State Department, you can get an automatic renewal if you turn in your current NCSP and another fee. Salaries. So everybody wants to know how much you can make. That varies greatly between parishes here. It can be as little as around $38,000 all the way up to $120,000, with the median being about $63,000. Some parishes offer bonuses. Some parishes do not. Some parishes offer incentive plans. Some parishes do not. So that is something you'd have to call and ask different parishes what their policy is on that. Cost of living around here is lower than the national average. It is approximately 2% lower than the national average for the bigger cities here in Louisiana, like New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Alexandria, Shreveport, those areas. Internship availability. Most parishes do not have internships per se. They have full-time or part-time SSP positions that you would be filling. So you would more than likely have a full caseload, unlike some internships in other states. However, you do get paid. Most internships, you will get paid if you have a BS. You'll get paid on a BS scale as far as like teachers. If you have a master's, you would get a master's pay, and then when you earned your SSP, you would get the SSP bump. Most people, you can go between 9 months and 12 months. Typically, it's about 10 months in Louisiana. How are applications usually taken? So mostly you will have to go through the district. Our LSPA website, which is lspaonline.org, has some new positions that are available. We try to update those pretty regularly so we can be a source for you all. You can also go to each individual parish if there's a certain parish you're looking into, and they will have listed support service type positions. Our range of duties, they vary greatly, especially from parish to parish. Sometimes within parish they vary greatly. So you would participate in an SBLC that's kind of like an ARD in Texas. It's a school building committee, and that looks at your general education population that may or may not need tiered interventions, screenings for dyslexia, dysgraphia, health issues, all the way into evaluations. Case manager, so that would be once a child is in an evaluation, you would coordinate that case. We can provide counseling, consultation with teachers, consultation with RTI interventionists, teachers, be the interventionist yourself, PBIS coordinators, pupil appraisal coordinators, child find coordinators, part of a universal screening team. Also SPED directors. That is something that has come up here recently in Louisiana. You can actually apply for a SPED directorship here now. You do have to have a certain amount of hours as a supervisor. You do have to take a part of the praxis, but that is an opportunity that can be available to you in Louisiana. We absolutely have shortages here in Louisiana, just like everywhere else. We are looking for wonderful interns or veterans to come out here and work with us. We do have teacher unions that you can be a part of. There's no specific school psychologist union, but you can be a part of the teachers union here in Louisiana. And some of our current projects with LSPA is we are working on helping out with the critical shortage. We are meeting with universities and talking up school psychology. We are working with our programs here in Louisiana to keep our interns here in Louisiana, because we've had some go out of state, but we would love to keep them here. Advocacy is a big item with us. We want to advocate for our critical shortage. We want to advocate for our school psychologists and getting us the most help that we can get in Louisiana to help us with this shortage and help our children. We are also developing our own disaster response team. So we are also transitioning, like with the NEAT teams with NASP, we are creating our own disaster relief team. So that is something that is up and coming with us. As far as our conference, LSPA conference is held in the beginning of every November. It's a $75 annual due for practitioner. We've had presenters. We've had Dr. John Kelly. We've had Dr. Tom Fagan, Dr. Tom Savage, Dr. Alan Coulter, and various other presenters come to our little state conference. But it is wonderful. We have great hospitality, great Southern food, lots of music, lots of fellowship and networking that go on. So we would love to have you all come over. We have small town, rural parishes, if that's something that you want to find all over Louisiana. We have great big cities. I know everyone knows New Orleans and Baton Rouge, but we have some other bigger cities, Shreveport, Alexandria, Monroe, that also, if you need that big city life, it's there. We have Mardi Gras. We're about to celebrate next week and have Mardi Gras. So, that's a big draw for lots of people. Get down, have a break in the middle of the second half of the year, get down there, have some beads and some king cake. And again, we have a wonderful conference. We pull in a lot of people. We have a lot of wonderful local talent as well as big national talent that we bring in every year. We try to keep it diverse, and we try to get out to our membership and see what is their pulse to get those people in that's really going to make a difference in our practice. Who to contact? You can go online to lspaonline.org. You can contact me, Annie Holmes, at president.lspa@gmail.com, or you can email our wonderful PR chairperson, Amanda Chisley, at lspa.publicrelations@gmail.com. Sorry about that. So we look forward to hearing from all of you, and we really, really, really would love to have you in Louisiana. Have a great night.
So I guess I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Katya Sussman. I am the co-advocacy chair for the Missouri Association of School Psychologists. So I'm representing Missouri. So with the first question, how does certification and licensing work? We actually are a pretty easy state overall. If somebody comes in with a school's NCSP outside of state, the Department of Education will automatically take in that certification and give them our student services certification. Basically what happens is whether you graduate from a NASP approved program or you transfer in with an NCSP, then you go ahead and apply for that student services certification. And once that application period is done, which is a month, 2 months, then you are able to work as a school psych in the state of Missouri. As far as private practice, we don't have school psychs in private practice at the specialist level, only at the PhD level if you have a clinical psych background as well. So you'd have to have clinical psych and school psychologists to be a private practice psychologist. As for the second question with salary range, cost of living, and salary freezes, We don't have a statewide, any statewide information on this. In the St. Louis region where I'm from, the salaries for practitioners range from about $53,000 for a first year to the mid 30s or low 40s. And that's in those smaller charter schools that don't have the big district funding. And then that goes all the way up. There's no salary freezes in place here in Missouri. And it does change with the region that you're in. So Kansas City is closer to that 48-55 range. And then rural, it'll go down, obviously. As far as cost of living, that's one thing that St. Louis and the state of Missouri is actually pretty good for. We have a good cost of living. It's pretty low. So your money goes a long way. Number 3, internships, availability and the setup of internships. So we do have paid internships available. They range anywhere from $30,000 on the high end to $5,000. And I don't think we have any unpaid internships, so all of them are paid, which is nice. We do have more internship placements than interns available. We only have 2 programs in the state of Missouri. One is an Ed-S, and then the other one is mostly a PhD at Mizzou. So we do have more placements than opportunities. Many districts have to hire outside of the state, especially in Kansas City area where there are no school psych programs, and also in the rural areas. So Northwest Missouri has been seeing a lot of problems with getting interns and even school psychologists. As far as what placement looks like in Missouri, it does vary from district to district, but mostly it is an independent internship. You're given 1 to 2 schools, and you have your supervisor who comes in and will talk with you, give you feedback, whatnot, once a week for about 30 minutes. So it's pretty much independent. I've only seen a couple of shadowed internships throughout these couple of years. Number 4. As far as applications, we do have a Missouri-wide system. It's called moteachingjobs.com. And most of the larger districts have their own web-based system, and they'll just put an advertisement out on moteachingjobs.com. Otherwise, it's NASP communications, and then we also have a careers in school psychology section webpage on our MASP page as well. So we do have those options, and then word of mouth. All right, number 5, range of duties and caseloads. It does vary widely across districts and the regions and the state. In Independence, which is just outside of Kansas City, they have a more systematic role. The job is more social, emotional, behavioral. And there's only, I think, 8 of them for the entire district. So it's much more working with leadership to put in place some of those social emotional learning pieces. But then on the St. Louis side, we have special school district, which is a huge district that only offers special education services to over 20 districts in the county of St. Louis. And so there, the majority of the job is testing and placing, since we're getting our money through special education. So we have a much smaller realm in terms of what we do. So there's a huge difference. Kansas City side of Missouri is much more progressive than the rural and the St. Louis areas. So there's a lot of diversity. As far as caseload, I'm in the St. Louis County area, and out of the 20 districts that we have in that St. Louis County Special School District, the average is about 35 cases a year. but then the range can go as high as 60 to 70 per year. So it's pretty high if you think about it. Number 6, is there a shortage? Yes, there is definitely a shortage. I think everybody is in agreement on that. We do not have school psychs working in every district or region, especially in those rural areas. We are not at the NASP 500 to 700 to 1 ratio. I think average in the state is 1,200 to 1,500 to 1. So we're pretty high above that. Most districts have school psych openings that go unfilled, especially in Kansas City area and the rural regions. Where Mizzou is in the middle of Missouri and St. Louis, we pretty much have all of our jobs filled every year just because we have those training programs nearby. But in those areas of Missouri where we don't have training programs, we do have difficulty placing school psychologists. So it kind of depends on where you are in terms of the shortage. On the other hand, though, we're also still trying to promote this job of school psychologists. So there's a lot of districts that have school psych examiners because Missouri still has school psych examiners. And so we're trying to break that wall down and say, no, you need a school psych because they can do so much more. And so we're still working on that. And it's kind of a chicken or an egg scenario. Do we get more programs to then get more people out there to show them that we, what we have, or do we try to build the infrastructure and then bring programs in? So we're kind of, what is a school psych examiner? That's a good question. Not everybody has that. So a school psych examiner is basically, they have I believe it's a master's in examination. And so basically they only know how to provide basically cognitive testing scores, academic achievement testing scores, but they don't have any behavioral background. They don't have any observation background. So they just come in and they test. So they don't have that kind of broad perspective and systematic approach. It's just, here are a couple of courses on assessment. Now go give assessments. And in the rural school districts, we've been seeing counselors go and take these 2 assessment courses and then come back and act as a school psych examiner, even though they don't necessarily have that certification. So we're trying to phase it out slowly, but it's slow going right now. So we're trying to work the best of both worlds. So number 7, moving on. We do have our MNEA and our normal teachers unions. So that's really, we don't have a school psych union. It's just our educators unions that we allow school psychs to be a part of. Number 8, relevant projects of the state organization. So I joined the state organization a year and a half ago as advocacy co-chair. And since then, we have hired a lobbyist. And through that lobbyist, we get weekly updates on all bills having to do with education, mental health, anything that could possibly fall under our realm. And we were able to host a first annual State Capitol Mental Health Advocacy Day. We had 40 participants there talking to legislators, which was a very nice turnout. We're doing our second one in January, and we've gotten some good contacts. We are also, and this is something that I've kind of spearheaded this summer, but we worked out a budget line item that we're going to propose to the state budget committee. And we're going to do that actually in the next month prior to the legislative session starting. And basically the budget item is just to add 2 more school psych training programs in our state. we got some really good feedback last year at the Advocacy Day from both the House Education Committee and the Senate Education Committee, saying that we need more school psychs and we need more training programs, especially in those rural areas in Kansas City. And so they said that if we proposed, got the numbers together and proposed a certain amount to promote new school psych training programs, that they would back that. And then we also talked to the lead Senate Budget Committee chairperson, and he said that as long as it's not an outrageous amount, then he doesn't see why not. So we're hoping to get that on the budget for the state, kind of slip it under there. Also, we formed a statewide mental health task force, and we did that along with the School Counselors Association and also the School Social Workers Association. We hosted 2 mental health summits already, and I think we have a third one in the works for this winter. But in each of those mental health summits, we've focused on key legislative agendas that have been going on right now, and we have educational association leaders and also legislators there talking about mental health, so getting the conversation started. We have the Missouri Association of School Psychologists. We came together and formed a committee to create evaluation tools for school psychs and school psych examiners, and those are now on the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's website, and all administrators are asked to use that when looking at their school psychs, rather than using a teacher's tool that doesn't have anything to do with our expertise. So that's nice. And we've had this last year with ESSA and with the Missouri School Improvement Plan. We've actually got, I think, over 6 of our board members being active members on work groups for both the ESSA plan that they created at the end of last year and the Missouri State Improvement Plan. So we've been very active in creating those accountability measures and those Department of Education standards to help better our students' outcomes. We also, a year ago, had the dyslexia legislation that has swept the nation came to Missouri and was passed, unfortunately. And so we were able to get a school psychologist on the dyslexia task force, and they worked very closely with the Missouri Board of Education and the Department of Education to make sure that while we are looking at dyslexia, we're looking at it more of a broad, how are students reading, and what are some good measures to look at that, and what are some evidence-based measures to look at that. And then, even more important, what do we do with that data afterwards? That doesn't go right into a special education disability category, so we don't go and evaluate, but rather let's put in some interventions and progress monitoring to see how they're progressing. So we made sure that we had a school psychologist kind of lead that discussion in the right direction for students and families. And then I think the last thing is we successfully got Medicaid billing approved for school psychologists. So unless all of our Medicaid funding is taken away, we're hoping that we can expand the amount of schools who use school psychologists, because then they'll be able to get reimbursed for some of what we do. So hopefully that'll expand our job role and also introduce us into other schools and districts that we haven't already been in. So I think that's it on the state organization side. We've been pretty busy and we'll continue to do so. And then the last 2 questions, dues and conferences. The Missouri Association of School Psychologists are Current dues for non-student members is $45 a year, and for students it's $20. And then we have two conferences. We have a mass conference just geared toward school psychologists. And then we also have a spring collaborative conference that we host with the Missouri Council of Administrators of Special Education, the Council for Exceptional Children, and Missouri Speech, Language, and Pathologist Association, as well as the Thompson Center for Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disorders. So we try to get a large combined conference where we can speak to other school psychologists, but also speak to other educators in the field, and expand our outreach through that. Fall conference, or that spring conference, is $150, and then $50 for students, and it's a 2-day conference. And then lastly, if you want to learn more about Missouri or Missouri Association of School Psychologists, our president is Michelle Augustin, and just masspresident@gmail.com. And then our website also has all of our information. So if you have any questions, otherwise I think that's it.
Imagine your morning commute requiring you to drive through Yellowstone National Park on your way to a one-room schoolhouse, with your only delay being that you have to wait for a herd of bison to mosey in front of your car, or stop to watch as a grizzly bear plays with her cubs in a field. That's the story of one school psychologist here in Montana. Hi, I'm Christine, over here under the big sky of beautiful Montana, representing the Montana Association of School Psychologists. We are really excited for the opportunity to share with you the specifics of school psychology practice in Montana, because as you can tell, we have a pretty unique gig over here. For example, Montana has the most one-room schoolhouses of any state in the country, with 87% of school districts here considered rural, according to the Federal Rural Education Achievement Program. Additionally, Montana boasts 12 American Indian tribes, 11 of which are federally recognized as nations by the United States. According to Montana's Office of Public Instruction, Montana is home to approximately 78,000 people of American Indian heritage, or 6.5% of the state's total population, which translates to 13.7% of Montana's total student population. We have two different types of licensure here, the Class 5 and Class 6 educator license. Class 5 is a 3-year non-renewable license and requires a master's degree in school psychology or a related field, with a minimum official transcript grade of B or better, as well as a professional supervised experience plan, as all Class 5 school psychologists must be under the supervision of a qualified Class 6 school psychologist. This is the license that most of our interns operate under. The Class 6 educator license requires either an NCSP or a minimum of specialist level of training and graduate degree in school psychology from a NASP accredited program, or a minimum of a master's degree or higher in school psychology from an accredited institution with an official transcript grade of B or better across areas. There is no opportunity for private practice at the specialist level in our state. Salaries vary across the state, ranging from $30,000 to $70,000, depending on experience. Because much of Montana is very rural, cost of living tends to be quite low, with the exception of our more populous areas. School psychologists are often included under the teachers' union umbrella as union members, as much of our history is deeply rooted in union jobs. Our internships are very unique in Montana, as our state licensure allows for those with a master's degree to often receive full salary and benefits as a full-time school psychologist under the alternate Class 5 license while working towards a specialist degree. This system has been created in collaboration with our accredited training program at the University of Montana in Missoula in order to address the deficit of school psychologists in our state. For those aspiring graduate students, more information on our graduate program, which I am a proud alumni of, can be found at umt.edu. Go Grizz! As expected, the school psychologist's role varies drastically throughout the state. Some psychs are itinerant, loading up their work vehicles with test kits and driving several hours throughout the week to conduct special education evaluations for rural districts. These larger, more rural counties are often served by 1 or 2 school psychologists working for a cooperative. Other psychs in more populous areas may only serve 1 building with 10 to 15 other psychs in the district, or have more of a broad role such as counseling, intervention, and consultation. A recent survey conducted amongst our members demonstrated that the average caseload size is 45, but can sometimes be as high as 250. Montana Association of School Psychologists, also known as MASP, is very active in advocacy efforts as well as professional development and many other things. Membership dues are $60 for regular members, $30 for retired members, and free for students or interns. They host an annual 2-day fall conference as well as an annual summer institute with locations varying around our beautiful state. They also host regional trainings throughout the school year according to that region's area of interest or need. If you're interested in checking out the jobs available in Montana, and there are plenty, or just more information about our state happenings, you can look at the Montana Association of School Psychologists website, masponline.us. Follow us on Facebook, run by yours truly, Montana Association of School Psychologists, as well as check out Montana's Office of Public Instruction's website, opi.mt.gov. Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope to see you in Montana soon. You won't regret it. Bye.
Hi, my name is Barry Barbarash. I'm a school psychologist from New Jersey. I'm the president of the New Jersey Association of School Psychologists, and I'm also the chairperson of their Government Professional Relations Committee, and I'm also a member of the NASP Government Professional Relations Committee. And I'd like to share a little with you about the practice of school psychology in New Jersey, which has its challenges for sure, but also want to share how we're trying to meet them. The practice of school psychology in New Jersey has really 2 contexts for the most part. One structure is the child study team. The child study team consists of a school social worker, a school psychologist, and a learning disabilities teacher consultant who does all the academic assessments. School psychologists in New Jersey do not do academic assessments. And the role of the child study team essentially is to do initial evaluations, IEPs, participate in reevaluations, and provide related services to special ed kids like counseling and some teacher consultation when needed. So that's one structure. The other structure is the case manager structure. The case manager oversees the programs of special ed kids. They schedule and do the annual reviews, reevaluations, anything to do with the special ed children. That's what the case manager does. And everybody on the child study team is assigned a certain number of children to case manage. So when you ask a school psychologist in New Jersey about their caseload, they're going to probably say 50 or 60 or 100. That's not the population of the school. It's the number of special ed kids they case manage. Now, though there are some school psychologists that have broader roles, for most school psychologists, that's the context under which they work. The last few years, we've been trying to change that a bit. And we've been talking about not expanding the role of the school psychologist, because most school psychologists in New Jersey, with all the students they have to case manage and their other child study, special ed functions, they're working at 110% capacity. So to ask somebody like that to expand their role doesn't make a lot of sense. So we've talked in terms of transforming your role. And to do that, we've been talking to other professionals in the schools and trying to educate them as to what is the profession of school psychology. Most don't know because all they see is what school psychologists do in the schools in New Jersey. So we talk about this within the framework of providing comprehensive school psychological services to all children, and we emphasize the all part. Now we do that not by simply telling them, here's all the things school psychologists do, but by our actions and things we get involved with that involve all children. A couple of examples. The New Jersey Department of Education formed a committee to develop and infuse social emotional learning goals in the New Jersey State curriculum, grades K to 12, and we had 3 school psychologists on that committee. The Department of Education also formed a committee to implement a multi-tiered systems of support in the schools. We had 3 school psychologists on that committee. And they also formed a stakeholders panel to look at implementing the Every Student Succeeds Act. There were no child study team members on that committee, except for 1 school psychologist. At our recent state conference, we had the Assistant Commissioner of Education be our keynote speaker, and she talked about the idea that school psychologists should not be complacent and be satisfied with just being child study team case manager people, but should really go beyond that role and provide services to all children. So we're interpreting that as an indication that maybe our message is getting through a little bit. The other thing we've done is we've developed a relationship with the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association. And we've done that because the principals and supervisors are generally the ones who determine what the roles of school psychologists are. So we've met with them several times to kind of educate them, let them know what we could offer. Last November, they contacted us and wanted to meet with us to talk about how principals might deal with children who are afraid to come to school after the last election. And it was great that they contacted us about that. We've also done presentations for them on the patterns of strengths and weaknesses model in terms of determining whether a child or what types of learning difficulties a child has. In the spring, one of our members is doing a presentation for them on mental health interventions he does in his school, interventions that apply to all children. The other thing we've done is we invest a little bit of money, and we were an exhibitor at their last conference, which was about 10 days ago. And at the conference, we had a table, and we had handouts. They were all NASP handouts on our table. Now, the handouts did not describe what school psychologists do, but it had information about, for example, things like school violence, mental health in the schools, bullying, how to deal with homework, social emotional learning, all things that school psychologists do for all children, because we want to help them see that school psychologists do provide services to all children and have them associate school psychologists with working with all children. So if something comes up in the school, if there's a crisis of some kind, that they think of the school psychologist as one of the people they should involve, not simply for issues involving special education. So these are the kind of things that we've been doing. We kind of see ourselves still at the beginning phase. This really is talking about systems change, and systems change is extremely difficult, especially when the system has been in place for about a half a century, which is about how long this system has been in place in New Jersey with virtually no change. And we all know that people don't like change. This is the only model that they're aware of, so it's not their fault that they don't know any better, so we're trying to educate them. And that even goes for school psychologists who may not have exposure to any models. But we think it'll be well worth it, and we think the beneficiaries will be all school children in the state of New Jersey. If you'd like any further information, please feel free to contact me. My email address is barryeva, BARRYEVA, @comcast.net. And I appreciate the opportunity to share all this information with you. Take care.
And how do people apply for school psychology jobs in New Jersey? Is there a state system, or? There is a website, New Jersey Hire. It's njhire.com, and you register for that. And that has a lot of the openings. But there are other websites like simplyhired.com and NewJerseySchoolJobs.com that also list job openings for school psychologists and other school positions. So that's another good source of information, I think, for anybody who's looking for
a position in New Jersey.
Hi, I'm David Lillenstein. I am the president of the Association of School Psychologists of Pennsylvania, and I'm going to try to address some of the questions that Rachel has sent. Certification is the way that school psychologists are able to operate in Pennsylvania. The certification is provided by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. We do not have licensure for school psychologists. However, there is licensure for psychologists, but a licensed psychologist may not operate within the schools unless they are also a certified school psychologist. Credentials do transfer between states. However, the state that the credential was received in previously will impact how easily or how smoothly it will transition or transfer into Pennsylvania. All of that is outlined on the Pennsylvania website for the Association of School Psychologists of Pennsylvania. That is asponline.org. That's ASPP online.org. And there are links there that will take you through the process for transferring your certification. We are not an NCSP state, so having an NCSP is an outstanding thing to do. However, it does not guarantee that you would be able to be transferred into Pennsylvania. Private practice currently is permissible if you are a certified school psychologist and you are operating under a school district. However, that loophole is closing for anyone who comes out of a training program within the next, I think, 2 years. Anybody after that will no longer be allowed to operate a private practice. Keep in mind, though, that the private practice is only available to individuals who are currently employed in a public school setting, and it's purely a loophole, but that loophole is closing. The salary range for a school psychologist in Pennsylvania varies rather significantly across the state. Generally, the salaries are higher in the eastern part of the state, around Philadelphia and Bucks County, and around Pittsburgh. But the northern tier of Pennsylvania and the rural areas tend to have lower salaries. But there are 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, and each school district sets their own salary scale. So the salaries do vary quite significantly. There are salary freezes in some parts of the state. Those areas tend to be more of the rural areas. However, for the most part, there are no longer salary freezes. But that, again, 500 districts, that's a district by district basis. The psychologists, most of the psychologists in Pennsylvania are members of the bargaining unit or the association. The association is typically a member of an NEA affiliate, and the urban districts tend to be more AFT affiliates, but the majority of districts in Pennsylvania are NEA-related associations. The Pennsylvania State Education Association is very active and represents school psychologists if they are members of their local association. Some districts in Pennsylvania do not hire their psychologists under the bargaining unit, but rather under an administrative contract. This allows the districts to provide a little bit more flexibility in the number of hours, in the start and stop time of their psychologists. It also allows for a little bit more flexibility in the salary range that is available to the psychologists, that they can negotiate their starting salary, they can negotiate bumps or changes in their salary a little bit more so than if the psychologist is tied into a bargaining unit. So that is something to keep in mind. However, the majority of psychologists in Pennsylvania are members of the association or the bargaining unit. The cost of living in Pennsylvania varies rather significantly. The eastern part of the state is much more expensive than the western part or the rural part. So you really need to do your homework and do your research, because the same house in one part of the state can actually run 2 to 3 times the cost that the exact same house would cost in another part of the state. So, but yet the salary may not necessarily be commensurate with that. Internships are available throughout the state. They tend to be more plentiful in the eastern part of the state than the western part. They are paid, however, they are also unpaid. On the ASP website, we do have a database that we try to keep that lists all of the different internships that may be available in Pennsylvania and the salaries that they offer. A typical salary for an internship is around $10,000. Some are more, some are less, but that's a fairly safe ballpark amount. Typically, the internship does not include benefits like health insurance, and typically does not include, any of the other benefits that you might get, like year credit for year of service and all of that. So, it is an internship, and that's it. Internships are set up by the individual seeking the internship. I do know that training institutions from out of state place their interns in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania can provide some really good internship experiences. But again, 500 districts. Within those 500 districts, you have many different school buildings, and the internships vary rather significantly, so it's important that you do your homework. Applications are advertised individually by districts, both for internships as well as positions. There is the Pennsylvania School Boards Association that has links to positions that are open. There is also the ASP Facebook page where we advertise positions, both internships and full year positions. Otherwise, it's really tough if you're looking to move to a certain area. What a lot of psychologists would say is start calling the districts and finding out where the positions are available. Currently, there are positions that are going unfilled in parts of the state. The northern tier of Pennsylvania, along the border of Pennsylvania and New York, has unfilled positions. The area around Williamsport, the area around Hazleton, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton has positions that are unfilled, as do some areas of western Pennsylvania north of Pittsburgh. Some of the urban cities, urban locations in Pennsylvania have also been unable or have had difficulty filling their positions. Positions tend to fill rather quickly in suburban and wealthier areas, and in those locations, as far as I know, positions are always filled. However, there are open positions as I speak right now. Many of the school districts, in fact, most of the school districts no longer take paper applications. Most of them subscribe to some kind of an online application submission system. But again, every district is different. They tend to follow within a region a similar manner for accepting applications, but every district is different. And what I would suggest is that you just go to the website for a district and you go to their personnel page and you see how they accept their applications. Range of duties and caseloads is going to vary rather significantly, not only across the state, but within districts. You have some districts like my own, which has a very good ratio. Because of that, we have an extremely diverse role. But you have other districts where psychologists are doing 150 evaluations a year or more. I don't think I've done 150 evaluations in the last decade. So it really varies significantly, and that's something that needs to be looked at, on a district by district basis. As far as the range of duties, the eastern part of the state tends to find a better ratio, and many of the psychologists may be building based, and they may also, because of that, have a more diverse role. They may be able to involve themselves in more than just assessments and evaluations. But again, that's case by case by district. Are there unions? Yes, there are unions. I think I've covered that already. Relevant projects in our state organization. Our state organization is very active. There are currently, I think, about 1,700 to 2,000 school psychologists in Pennsylvania. Our state association represents between 500 and 600 active members. However, we speak on behalf of all the school psychologists in Pennsylvania. We put on a fall conference at Penn State. There's every year a spring conference that we tag team with Duquesne University's School Psych program, as well as Temple University's School Psych program, and we co-sponsor the 2 spring conferences. One of them is in Pittsburgh and one is in the Philadelphia area. And then the fall conference, we tag team with Penn State University's School Psych program, and we have a conference in the fall in State College. In fact, the Fall School Psych Conference at Penn State is the longest standing, longest running school psychology conference in the country. And Penn State has an endowed speaker fund, so we have a 2-day conference. The 1 day is all local talent. We have presenters present 3-hour workshops on the first day, and then the second day of the conference is an endowed speaker where we bring somebody in with a national name to speak about some national topic. Our dues currently for membership are $75 per year. Students are $25, and we do have a first year and second year school psychologist fee of $50. Retired members are $25. Attendance at our conference, for the full 2-day conference in the fall, it's $200, and for a 1-day attendance, it's $125. And, it tends to be fairly heavily attended. However, with close to 2,000 psychologists in the state, and most of the school psychologists actually attend NASP, so our state conference association, or state association conference is actually percentage-wise less attended than in many states. We also have a Department of Education in Pennsylvania at the top, and then below that we have training and technical assistance. Below that we have intermediate units, and then we have the districts underneath the intermediate units. The Training and Technical Assistance Network and the intermediate units in Pennsylvania offer a lot of professional development opportunities for free. It's paid for by the state, and because of that, our state association has some difficulty sometimes attracting attendees to our conference because we charge $200 for a really good professional development opportunity, but somebody may be able to go to their local intermediate unit or to one of the 3 training and technical assistance centers in Pennsylvania for free. So that is a challenge that we have. I would hope that anybody considering Pennsylvania would contact anyone at the Association of School Psychologists of Pennsylvania. We'd be more than happy to walk you through the process and to assist you along the way. Although we are known as a state that tends to export school psychologists to other states, particularly the West and the Southeast, because we have a glut of school psychology training programs, we are also very happy to welcome school psychologists from all over the country, and we're happy to help you through that process. Please check out the ASP Facebook page, and you can see what positions are open in the state that we are aware of, both in terms of an internship as well as a full year employment. And if anybody is interested, you may contact me. Again, my name is David Lillenstein. I'm the president of ASP. You can reach me at dlillenstein, Lillenstein, at hershey.k12.pa.us. My phone number is 717-443-2361. Please give me a call if you have any questions. And otherwise, good luck, and hopefully someday we can welcome you to Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name is Kristen Messier, and I'm representing the state of Rhode Island. I am the current president of the Rhode Island School Psychologists Association, also known as RISPA, and I'm here to tell you why you want to live and work in Rhode Island. So living in Rhode Island, it is the smallest state in the union, but we do have the biggest heart here. We have amazing scenery, beautiful coastline, beach time here in the summer is amazing. We have wonderful seafood, great restaurants in the city of Providence, which was rated number 3 in the country at one point for having the best restaurants and cuisine. So nightlife is great. There's tons of things to do. You can drive through the state in about 45 minutes. We have a very diverse communities where you can either live in an urban setting, suburban, or even out in the rural areas. And the same thing goes for practicing as a school psychologist. Uniquely, Rhode Island is the only state that has an official state drink, which is coffee milk. If you haven't had it, I highly recommend it. It's a tasty treat. So that's definitely a bonus living in Rhode Island, being able to have your coffee milk at any time, and also Dell's lemonade during the summer, and then grabbing a wiener from Onlyville, which is a landmark here in Rhode Island. So as far as living, it's really a unique place and offers a lot of amenities. As far as being a school psychologist in the state, I'll tell you a little bit about how you would go about doing that. So the easiest way to get certified is to go to the Rhode Island Department of Education's website, which is www.ride.ri.gov. They have some really nice guidance documents about how you would go about being certified as school psychologists. So we fall under the umbrella of a service professional or support professional. So you would click that link on the website and it spells out the pathways to becoming certified. So you would just have to prove that you attended an accredited institution for grad school, and then also that you meet the competencies that NASP lays out. You would have to take the praxis in school psychology as well and show proof of those scores. If you are an out-of-state practicing school psychologist, you would additionally show any other state that you have been certified in previously, any past work experience, and when submitting for your certification. So they will do a record review, if you will, to determine if you meet the course requirement. The website has frequently asked questions regarding certification process, and it's really nice. It lays out how long turnaround time is for processing your certification and any other questions that you have. So it's pretty laid out on the website. So that would be the best resource to go to figure out next steps in getting certified here in Rhode Island. So as far as licensure or private practice in the state of Rhode Island, specialist level school psychologists are not allowed to be independent. So you would have to have your doctorate in order to have a private practice here in Rhode Island. So a little bit about the roles and responsibilities of a school psychologist in Rhode Island. So we have 36 districts in our state and varying practices. Some of our schools are urban and suburban, and some school psychologists are still practicing in a very traditional role as far as doing meetings and assessment primarily, whereas other school psychologists are heavily involved with MTSS and consultation and counseling, also doing meetings and assessments, and really being advocates in their district. So it really does vary, again, from what district, town you're practicing in. And I have found just advocacy for your role within the district goes a long way, and really selling what you as a school psychologist just can do, and really advocating to practice within the NASP practice domains as well. So internship opportunities within Rhode Island. So typically how internships are set up in Rhode Island is through our training institutions. So we have two. We have University of Rhode Island and Rhode Island College. So Rhode Island College will connect with varying districts who are interested in having interns, and there is a stipend that is typically attached to that, which is roughly about $10,000 a year. And those districts have agreements with Rhode Island College to train the interns in the way that they have spelled out. So pretty much following NASP guidelines. And then a lot of U or I students, they typically sometimes go out of state, and they will arrange their internships on their own or with the help of their professors. Out-of-state interns, I have directed specifically to contact special ed directors or superintendents of the districts. So again, if you go back to the RIDE website, they will give you a list of all the LEAs in the state and contact information. So getting a paid internship in Rhode Island is probably pretty slim. You may have some districts who might agree to do the stipend attached to the internship. So I would encourage anybody who would be interested in doing an internship in Rhode Island to reach out and connect with the different districts. Or you can come and do it for free. We're very happy to take interns anytime. So if you ever need any direction on where to go, you can go to RISPA's website, which is www.rispa.org, and you can contact any of the board members and we can help direct you in whatever questions you have. What else about Rhode Island? Oh, ratios. I forgot to talk about ratios. So again, that kind of varies too from district to district. I have colleagues who have ratios that are as little as 600, and then other ones who are upward to 1,200. So again, I think it depends on your district, how they view the role of a school psychologist in their district, and just really about advocacy as well. So those, would be questions if you're interested in interviewing for a position here in Rhode Island, making sure you're asking, and again, the different levels of responsibilities. So cost of living in Rhode Island, we are on the Northeast, so it's not the greatest place to live. Taxes are kind of high, but it is cheaper than other surrounding areas, such as like New York and Boston. So beautiful thing about Rhode Island is you could work in Rhode Island, and we border Mass and Connecticut. So those are areas too that somebody looking to relocate could look to as well, because driving time is fairly quickly, you can fairly quickly get anywhere you want. Talk about salary. So school psychologists in the state of Rhode Island are on the teacher contracts. So we are unionized in the state. Typically, school psychologist, if you have your master's, depending, or your CAGs, which many school psychologists in Rhode Island have, there's different pay schedules. So it would be a base pay that you initially start out on, and then if you have your master's, your CAGs, your doctorate, then they start tacking on additional salary. So most salaries start around $40,000 roughly, give or take a few thousand in Rhode Island, and most districts are on steps. So some districts there's 10 steps, others there's 15. So you move up through the steps every year that you're there, provided you're working full time. And top step usually is about 85 to, I would say, $89,000. There's other factors such as longevity in the district. There are like about 3 districts in Rhode Island who also offers a small stipend for having your NCSP. So there's definitely a range as well. So if you have prior experience, that's something that may or may not be negotiated when you are hired and what step you're placed on. But ultimately, once you put your time into the district, you make a fairly good salary, and health benefits in most districts that I talk to are fairly good as well. and what you're contributing and what the district is contributing. And then also we have our pension system in Rhode Island, which recently had an overhaul. So if you're new to the field, pretty much the way that works is every year you work, it's a percentage of what your ultimate top step is. So if you work for a district for 30 years and you max out at $89,000, it would be 30% of that. So just to give somebody an idea as coming into the state. And then there are other supplemental like 401, 403Bs that you can contribute it as well to supplement your retirement and all of that. So let's see what else we need to talk about. RISPA. Yes. So Rhode Island School Psychologists Association. So right now we have a really strong board. We do a lot of work around professional development. So we hold our annual fall conferences, and then we try to do other things such as workshops and mini PDs as often as we possibly can during the school year. We meet monthly. We typically try to go somewhere fun, have a bite to eat, maybe an alcoholic beverage. It's a great opportunity to network and socialize with colleagues, receive peer supervision. We're involved with a bunch of different advocacy efforts right now. So Rhode Island is we're trying to get school psychologists to be reimbursable for their services under Medicaid in the schools. So right now we have a bill that we're trying to push through legislation. So if you're interested in legislation, there's committees to get involved with and a lot of different efforts to advocate in that lens. Other ways to get involved with RISPA. So obviously I had mentioned professional development. We try to do a lot of things around advocacy. So right now we want to address, which I didn't talk about that either, the school psychology shortages that is occurring in the country and more specifically in Rhode Island. So Rhode Island is starting to experience a shortage in school psychologists. There have been several districts that have not been able to fill positions this past year. And then things such as like maternity leaves and leaves of absences, they're not able to fill those vacancies. So there's definitely some good prospects right now in Rhode Island, but that's something that RISPA is working on to address. So there's many ways to get involved with RISPA, as being a board member or opting to participate in a committee, working on advocacy efforts. So we're a very friendly bunch here. So if you ever move to Rhode Island, I would encourage you to go to the website, check us out, contact us, meet us out for one of our meetings at any point in time. So I think I covered everything. If not, then absolutely go back to the website, so rispa.org. You can contact myself or any of the other board members if you have any more specific questions about Rhode Island that I did not answer in today's webcast. I hope this information was helpful, and I hope it encourages you to come live and practice in Rhode Island. We would be happy to have you. Go Rudy!
First of all, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm very passionate about trying to address shortages in our profession, and I think that we have a really good opportunity to talk about the great places that you can practice school psychology. Mm-hmm. And so I'd really like to tell you a little bit about the practice of school psychology in South Dakota. We are the Plains, and so know that coming to South Dakota to practice mental health provider gives you a lot of opportunity to craft your own role. You get a lot of autonomy to be able to design systems in which you can really make a lot of impact on students. You're also probably going to be one of the only mental health providers around, and so it also just gives you this opportunity to have a significant impact on the life of a child. To give you a little bit of an idea of credentialing in South Dakota, we are pretty straightforward when it comes to our credentialing processes. We go through the Department of Education. And so if you go through certainly a NASP accredited program, and if you have demonstrated applicable content, pedagogy, and professional knowledge and skills that align with NASP standards, and you demonstrate that competency, certainly with like a praxis test, things of that nature, you'll be able to get certified. The other thing to know is that if you have documentation of current national certification from NASP, you will also be certified in South Dakota. Taking a little bit of a look at our salaries, they might look a little bit lower compared to other parts in the country, but I will assure you that our cost of living is also quite a bit lower than in other parts of the country. And so I think that, you know, there's a pretty big range. It also depends on where you are in terms of the shortages. You know, if there's higher level of shortages, you certainly will be paid a lot more. It's safe to say that you know, first year, second year school psychology at the specialist level, you're probably looking at the high 40s, low 50s as a starting wage, 50,000. If you are going into high shortages areas, it can go all the way up to 90,000 per year. Some places actually is more like 98,000. Again, it just depends on where you're willing to go to practice. Again, the cost of living is very low, and there really has been no salary freezes as of right now. We're actually in a state that's really trying to increase teacher salaries. And so that has actually gone alongside of school psychology salaries to really try to increase those to make them more competitive, certainly with the market. And I will tell you that we love interns in South Dakota. Do know, though, that our jobs are not advertised as internships. They are advertised as full-time jobs. But oftentimes those full-time jobs will take interns, and you can get supervision, but you're going to apply for just a regular full-time school psychology job and then indicate that you are an intern. In terms of how they're set up, I will tell you that the internships in South Dakota are fully paid. You are paid like a full-time school psychologist. What you should do is you really should start to look at some of our, we have some statewide systems that you can take a look at. One of the best systems that we have, it's kind of a weird acronym, so I'll say it slow, but it's called ASBSD, which is the Associated School Boards of South Dakota. So if you go to www.asbsd.org, and you sign up, they have like a teacher applicant system. So then you're on this system, you're thinking, why am I here? This doesn't seem like it's for school psychologists. Indeed, this is where you go. And then you give yourself alerts. It sets you up for the school or our job openings out on our Facebook page. So if you want to follow us on the South Dakota Association of School Psychologists on Facebook, we do put a lot of our job openings out on there. In terms of range of duties and caseloads, do know that our caseloads range. Again, we're in shortages country, so you might have a little bit of a higher caseload. I think we don't have a great grasp on this, but my gauge is about 1 to 1,500, kind of depending on where you are. You might have more of a restricted role in shortages areas just because we're trying to get needs met. We actually have a lot of people coming out of retirement to get some of these needs met. So do know that that's a part of what's happening, but also know that, again, you're going to have some autonomy in South Dakota. And so you can have more of a comprehensive role, especially if you're at that district level and trying to do services. In terms of shortages, I've indicated to you previously, but we do have a significant shortage of school psychologists in South Dakota. When I was doing some informal data collection, I will tell you that it almost appears that we have about 10% of our workforce that is in shortage area. So meaning that I believe we have about 110 school psychologists. It's as a rough estimate, but in terms of our jobs that are just left open right now, we have about 10% of that are not open or that are unfilled. There are no unions in South Dakota. You can participate in the South Dakota Educators Association, but that is definitely at your own leisure. In terms of some of our relevant projects, we're really trying to look, we're pairing with our university settings to look at the role of the rural school psychologist. We're excited about dyslexia, doing some investigations on that, provision of mental health in rural settings, and then also trying to figure out ways that we can research and address these shortages. We're trying to be creative. We give We actually give gift cards to our practicum supervisors because we're really trying to thank them for keeping school psychologists in South Dakota. In terms of our dues and our conference fees, it's $45 a year to be a member of NASP, certainly a great deal. Our conferences, they tend to be every fall. We have conferences that cost ranges from about $150 to $195, and then every other spring we have a skill conference that comes. And that's something like last year we had the Prepare model come in. We've done things about dyslexia. They tend to be really content specific. The biggest thing I do want you to know is if you're interested, again, I would love you to contact our Facebook page at the South Dakota Association of School Psychologists. My name is Dr. Carrie Oyen. I'm the president of SADASP. And so if you wanted to reach out to me, it's Carrie, Kari, .Oyen, O-Y-E-N, at usd.edu. And I just would like to leave you with this note that South Dakota is a great place to work and to live. You know, I live on an acreage. I have a gravel road and a gravel road as my neighbor, and I love the climate that I get to experience. I get to have a lot of space to be able to breathe and really contribute to my own self-care. And I hope that we can continue to address this shortage. And I thank you so much for having us.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Rich, and I'm the Utah Association of School Psychologists President-elect, and I'm here with Bethany Monson-Ford, who is our
Correspondence Secretary and member of the board.
So we're here today to answer some questions for the podcast about what it's like to be a school psychologist in Utah. So we're going to do our best to answer all of the questions with knowing that maybe we're not giving the exact picture for every school district that is in the state. So we're going to do our best.
All right, so first question that was asked of us to talk to you about is how does certification and licensing work in Utah? So as a master's level or EDS level, even a PhD level school psych working in the school system, that licensure is through our State Board of Education. So the Utah State Board of Education website has all the information you'd want to find in regards to licensing. They keep it up to date and current. Feel free to reach out there. We know many of you tend to think, how can I transfer to Utah? Transferring is easy and fine. Lauren can speak to herself and how that went.
So I transferred my license from Oregon. So I took the Oregon licensing exam for the TSPC and then transferred to Utah when I came here for my internship. And it was really easy to get my internship going and just have the state board write me a letter of this person is okay. They can practice in the meantime while they're getting their license. It did take a couple months for my license to formally transfer, but the process was fairly straightforward. I just had to wait for the bureaucratic process of my license to post in Oregon, for that to communicate with the state board here, and then for them to hit okay. But the requirements were all easily transferred over.
Excellent. We do have quite a few people that come from out of state, so know that you're not alone if that's the category you're in. Another common question that comes up in regards to licensing is for PhD level candidates who want to do private practice. That is an option if you meet those requirements. However, to do private practice, that is through our Division of Professional Licensing, or DOPL. And again, the website for them is different than the State Board of Education website.
Yep.
Salary?
So the next question is about salary range, cost of living. Do we have salary freezes? So this really varies from district to district, but a good encapsulation of that is salaries range anywhere from the 40s to the 70s. So a base starting salary in Utah is usually somewhere around $40,000. It could be up to $50,000. There are districts who are including signing bonuses for when you come to their district. That just depends on what their district has approved for that year. We don't typically have salary freezes, not to say that that would be impossible, but we haven't had one in a very long time. The cost of living in Utah is really manageable. So a median home right now to buy is about $300,000. We rank number 28 in the nation for range of livability costs. I would say renting in Utah is fairly easy as long as you're finding the right places. Obviously, in the more urban areas, like if you're in Salt Lake City and you're trying to live downtown, that's going to be a little bit more difficult, but most of the time you can find something that's within a good range. Since Utah, we do have a lot of families here. That's also important to consider if you're moving, relocating your family here. There's lots of options for that. I would say if you're looking at districts in the north section of Utah, you're going to find living fairly easy. If you're looking more in rural parts of Utah, that may be a little bit trickier, and your commute may be a little bit longer, which would increase obviously your cost of gas, but that's just something to consider in which type of district and work are you looking for, more urban and rural. And Utah is nice in that we have both of those options, so you can kind of pick and choose what your experience you want it to be.
Yeah. Utah, if you look at our state, tends to be mostly, I'd say half being more rural, and those locations are going to have likely a lower housing fees associated, whether renting or purchasing. If you look to more of the urban, suburban area, I think that's your other half, is more suburban, urban, centralized around Salt Lake and the surrounding counties. I'd say it's basically more of our central and southern area that you're going to be encompassed in more of the rural locations outside of St. George locations.
But your regular costs, like getting around, food, going out to eat, to dinner, those type of things are all fairly low, especially compared with some larger cities in surrounding states.
Gas is cheap in Utah.
Yes,
we're in the $2 range usually. So, okay. So many will ask questions in regards to internship. One of the things that sets Utah apart, I know there are other states that do this, but Utah, as the vast majority of districts, do pay full fees. Not full fees. We're not charging you to come to Utah. Full salaries here in Utah. So on your first year, if you're working as an intern, you're paid as a full-time salary. That would also include, in most districts, your insurance pieces. And many districts, again, I can't speak for all, but the vast majority definitely also will keep you in that salary step range. So your first year as an internship counts as your first year working, and on you go, and wouldn't have to duplicate that.
So the next question is kind of how are internships set up, part of that internship question. Most districts, when you come here as an internship, consider you a full-time school psychologist. So you're provided with the internship requirements that your program meets, but you have your own schools, you have your own settings, and you are the school psychologist, intern for those locations. So you have a lot of independence here, but a lot of the school districts work very, very, very hard to provide you with a lot of support and face-to-face supervision as much as possible that meet your requirements. The next question is, how are those applications usually taken?
District by district.
We don't have a statewide system necessarily, district by district. Some of them will post on NASP that they have an opening. Some of them will use the UASP website, and most just have them listed on their district website. So I would say your safest bet is to research what areas of the state you want to work in and what district models you like, and then to look at their job postings directly to see what type of internships they're offering.
That being said, most districts do let us know, and we've tried to keep our website up to date so that you have that easier access point. But the vast majority, if not all, of our districts currently have openings available. So knowing you can reach out to each district's website in particular. So when it comes to range of duties in schools, again, that's going to be our mantra of this little podcast moment, is it depends where you're at. Most of our suburban and urban districts really like to have the psychologist doing a nice balance between assessment and direct service with students, both students who have IEP, 504 supports, or our gen ed supports. Utah is moving forward with the MTSS model. So school psychs, as appropriate based on that school district and the school psychs desire, can definitely be involved at the school level at all three levels. What else could we speak to of kind of our range of duties? It obviously depends on district, but
I think the things that I think are similar between districts, at least in the suburban and urban areas, we are working very hard in advocating for ratios to be lower so that school psychs have the time to do a lot of counseling and group work and one-on-one work and systems level work instead of just assessment. And I know that our more rural schools would like to get there, but that's just a problem. That's just a chicken and the egg problem. And how can we get people to go to urban schools, to hire them, to then decrease our ratio, to then provide more opportunities for, a wide variety of activities. I think that if you're interested in a rural district, we have really great ones that are working really hard to sort of meet the needs of all their students as creatively as possible. And if you're looking for urban districts with a variety of tasks at hand, we definitely have those as well. We have a lot of districts that require a lot of support behaviorally, that require a lot of support for our Title I schools that are in Utah, and some very specific cultural supports for our state that's growing and expanding, especially, our minority groups are continuing to grow. So I think that there are a lot of tasks that are different in Utah, and I would never tell anyone that we're purely just a test state. No. There, I would say, as a school psychologist here, and Bethany, working in a few different districts, knows that most of the time our duties are widely ranged, and we get to practice a lot of consultation and collaboration and counseling.
Yeah, my experience and the colleagues I've interacted with most, and I will say, are more in the suburban and urban areas of Utah, but definitely have a nice range of pieces that you can work to and really stretch your wings as a school psych. Yeah. Those duties, and as we've said over and over, there's quite a bit of opportunity. There is a shortage in Utah, just like most other locations. So the job prospects are bountiful here. Reaching out to most districts, you're going to be told, yep, we've got some openings. So it's...
As far as how many schools you can, or what your ratio is going to be with students, I think in urban and suburban areas, most of our Salt Lake County and surrounding counties are trying to work for 1 to 2 schools per psych. Some of our districts have done a really good job advocating, and they have 1 school per psych, and some still have 2. In our more rural areas, it's a heftier caseload.
And I think recognizing that your caseload is going to really follow up with what your duties are going to look like. Your higher school ratio to psych is going to end up being more assessment heavy.
Are there unions that school psychs can participate in is the next question. So school psychs here in Utah, you can participate in your local education agency union by district, and then also the state educators union. It's not mandatory, it's an opt-in. They represent everyone, and you can choose to pay dues if you would like to participate. You can also participate in UASP, although we're not a formal union. We work hard to advocate for school psychologists in the state.
So the next question is talking about our dues. So to participate in the Utah School Psych Association, our fees for that, or our dues, regularly are $50 for regular members, meaning you're not a student or an affiliate. So if you're watching this, you're probably going to be a regular member, meaning licensed, or a student. So for regular $50 is our traditional fee. Sometimes that might change, so I'm not quite sure what year you're watching this lovely video, but for 2019, the fees and dues are $50, and then for students, they're $15. We hold an annual conference in the fall that has ranged anywhere from a full day to a couple days. And as such, our fees for the conference attendance vary between $80 and $120 historically. Again, it's 2019, so when you watch this, it may be a little bit different. Just watch our website for that. Another thing that we do historically that we've had some really nice feedback is for members. Traditionally in the spring, we offer a shortened conference or mini workshop that is free for our members, and then a much more reduced rate for non-members. So hopefully that gives you a little info on some of the primary conferences that are occurring. We do have the National School Psych Conference coming to Salt Lake here in a few years, so many of you may be getting the pleasure of seeing us in person.
Yay! So the next question is there any additional information we feel is important? And we want to take the time just to kind of talk about Utah in general. So if you like the outdoors, or if you like nature, Utah is definitely a great place to be. We're part of the Mountain West, so we've got beautiful mountains, which means you've got great skiing, great hiking. Even if you just like to take walks, we've got some beautiful areas and canyons that you can take walks in. We also, I feel like, our urban and suburban areas are growing rapidly, so we're, our cultural activities and things like that are growing rapidly too. I would say we have a lot of good restaurants now. Salt Lake City is booming, and we're having a lot of development there. So I would say if you like the feel of a big city but in a smaller package, that's probably what you're going to get in Salt Lake and a lot of the surrounding areas. I personally love Utah and moved back to Utah because I really appreciated having nature so easily accessible. I can leave my house and be somewhere very, very far away from people within a half an hour. And there's a lot of great access to that. I would also say that we have a lot of good community activities going. Like we have strong...
a lot of cultural diversity.
Yeah, we have strong cultural diversity. We have a lot of public radio events and, Zoo Arts and Parks Foundation puts on a lot of things. We have great other things like opera and ballet. We have one sports team. We have the Jazz. So we only have basketball, but
isn't there technically a football field?
We have a junior league football
Don't
thing.
ask us about sports.
I don't know. We have the Jazz. I would say that people in Utah are very kind. We live in a culture that is very kind to everyone. We do have a lot of people who have families here in Utah, but I think that that's starting to change as our demographic changes a little bit and our generations are growing. Everyone's going to ask about the Church of Latter-day Saints, because that's based in Salt Lake and in Utah. And I would say that I work with an equal amount of people who follow that religion and who follow other religions. And I wouldn't say that it's an impingement on my lifestyle at this point in Utah.
No, I think when it comes to that component, there might be some questions. I know for some reason, historically, we have a feel for, it's a dry state. No, it's not a dry state.
We have alcohol. We're not all polygamists.
That's a great way of saying it.
Yeah.
But the diversity really is growing both in regards to religion, in regards to family makeup. Utah's a really great place to be. We can't show you. You see our lovely cupboards here, but if we moved the screen a little bit, we're not going to because it's horrible lighting. It's currently snowing and beautiful in Utah, as Lauren was mentioning. You really can't, it's just hard to encompass the beauty of the nature of Utah. Mm-hmm. If we literally took you on a little walk, it would be all of about a minute and a half, and we'd be at the beginning of a canyon head and a walking trail here in Utah. It's gorgeous. We get all 4 seasons. Other than the ocean, you can't really miss out in Utah in regards to nature and what it can offer. So we hope we've answered some of your questions. Feel free to reach out to us if you'd like more direct information. You can follow us on our Twitter,
which is at Utah School Psych, or our Facebook, which is Utah School Psychology. You can also find us online at uasponline.org.
Awesome.
Okay.
Best of luck as you guys are exploring locations to be. We hope you consider Utah.
All right, hello everybody. I am Stacy Kern. I'm a school psychologist in Laramie, Wyoming.
And I'm Sarah Perkins. I'm a school psychologist in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
And we both sit on the board for Wyoming School Psychology Association, and we volunteered to do this short informational plug, I guess, about being a school psychologist in the state of Wyoming.
Yeah. So Wyoming, in terms of credentialing, it's pretty straightforward. If you went to a school psychology program, odds are you're probably qualified to work here. Some places tend to give a national certification extra weight. Some places don't. It's not really a statewide thing. It's a district thing. But yeah, if you took the praxis or got an institutional recommendation from your graduate program, you're probably good to go. There's a weird knowledge of U.S. and Wyoming constitutions requirement to work in education at all in the state, but it's a multiple choice test and you can take it as many times as you want, and they give you a study sheet, so it's not too hard.
Pretty easy to pass.
Yes. In terms of salary and cost of living and all that, there's a huge range. Some districts treat psychs as administrators, and depending on your experience and education, you can make 6 figures. And some treat us as teachers, and more in like the $45,000 range to start.
Yeah, you'll find that a lot with Wyoming. After you get credentialed, we aren't licensed, but we are credentialed, certified staff in the state of Wyoming. After that, things are pretty district dependent. So each district does things just a little bit differently as far as the psychologist role. So Yeah, I know Sarah and I, we work in a district 45 miles apart, and our salary ranges are wildly different. I'm much lower than what they are over in Cheyenne. So it just depends on what district. The rural districts will pay a lot of money. It's difficult living there because of the isolation and limited, services and things around, but you get paid quite a bit of money. So just depends.
The cost of living, and it depends again if you live in one of the cities like Cheyenne or Laramie versus the rural, but in general I'd say it's relatively typical for the US. We do have salary freezes. Our funding's based almost entirely on minerals in Wyoming for education: oil, natural gas, coal. And so if there's a bad coal year, then everybody panics and they freeze funding. If there's a good coal year, then they'll boost salaries and funding because it's hard to get people. So it tends to sort of seesaw where there's like 10 years of freeze and then 30% raises in 1 year, depending on mineral. Right now, it's in a downswing of freezing and freaking out. So
yeah, in my district last year, we were frozen. Our pay scale was frozen. I believe they can unfreeze it this year going into next year. We'll see.
Ours was frozen too.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Okay, internship availability. That again, this is the Independent West. We don't do anything as a group, so it really just depends on the district. In general, I'd say you're not going to find any internships listed anywhere online. You're just going to have to call and ask.
Yeah. And if a lot of times they will, districts, if they are really desperate to fill a position, you can get be offered a full-time first-year teacher contract as an intern if the need is great enough. But again, it just depends on each district.
Yeah, so it can vary to being paid full-time to not being paid at all for an intern. So it really just depends. You have to ask. If you want to be an intern in Wyoming, I would recommend that you ask and you negotiate with the district and see what you can get. Let's see. Applications, again, there's no statewide thing. It really is district. You're going to have to ask, contact each district and look to see if their jobs are posted and ask them how they go about it.
We do have the Wyoming School Board Association website that they'll pull posted positions from districts across the state. It's not perfect. Sometimes they miss districts, but that's a good place to start. And not all the times, but sometimes obviously districts will post to the NASP job website. But if you really want a good idea of what positions are open in the state, you will have to look at each district's website individually.
And we as a School Psychology Association have talked about trying to centralize job postings. We might do that in the future, but currently they're not posted on our website. But that's something we're going to consider. In terms of range of duties and caseloads, I'd say again, it really depends on where you work and who you are. We just tend to be a very independent-minded culture and state, so you can probably argue for whatever you think is important. But for the most part, it's what you'd expect of a school psychologist in terms of the NASP practice model.
Yeah, wide range, very comprehensive practice of school psychology. Because the state is less populated than most other states, our ratios, psychs to students, are fairly low, I would say, for across the nation. But because of that, psychs do get to take on a more comprehensive role. So from individual and group counseling, obviously IEP evaluations for special ed. Our state is moving more towards a comprehensive MTSS framework. So we've been tasked with sitting on a lot of the MTSS building level and district level and state level MTSS work groups, parent training. So just dependent upon the district, but generally school psychologists take a pretty comprehensive role in Wyoming.
And in our district, we're considered administrators, so we do a lot of team leading and organization, scheduling of teams and meetings, and not necessarily supervising or evaluating teams, but more just organizing them. And then like Stacy was saying, it really depends on, there's like Psych in our district whose pet project is RTI, and so he does a lot of that. And there's other psychs who are really into, counseling, and they do a lot of that. And it really seems like you can make your role into what you want it to be within reason.
Mm-hmm. One of the cool things too, for the most part, school psychologists are not case managers.
That's true.
In the state of Wyoming. Either districts will have case managers, a completely separate position, or special ed teachers will take on that role. I know very few psychologists who actually have to case manage their own caseload, which I love. I love that model.
It is great.
So.
I've case managed a few kids here and there if it makes sense given unique circumstances, but probably 3.
Mm-hmm.
So not very many. So that is a nice perk.
Yeah.
In terms of, is there a job shortage? Generally, yes. It would depend on where you are. Here in Cheyenne, because we're close to the Colorado border and we're a bigger city and we pay well, not as much. If you go to the rural places, definitely there's a job shortage, and you could sort of have a lot of autonomy and power in asking for what you need in those places.
Yep. One of the cool things, I guess, too, to mention is that special education currently, and has been for quite a few years, is 100% funded through the state, which can help out with the job shortage issue. There's usually funding to fund school psychologist positions. It's just difficult to get people to come to a rural state. But the funding model as it stands right now is pretty darn good for the state of Wyoming.
That's definitely true. They're meeting right now, so it could change, but it is good overall.
Yeah.
In terms of unions and that psychs can participate in, there are unions if you're paid on the teacher scale. If you're paid on an administrator scale, you obviously can't then be a member of a teacher union. Mm-hmm. So it really depends how your district sees you. I'd say most psychs are treated as teachers and can therefore participate in their unions if they wish.
Yep.
Relevant projects for our state organization. We have a brand new website. It started in January. It's wyschoolpsych.org. We're trying to put some relevant resources up there. We have weekly blog posts and other cool resources. So that's been our new project lately.
Yeah, our main focus this last year and going forward is just really revitalizing our state association. It kind of fell by the wayside a little bit, so we are just trying to build it back up, build our membership back up. Really, we have less than 100 school psychs, I think, across the state of Wyoming. So we're just trying to really connect everybody across the state and just really develop a healthy state organization.
Absolutely. And for that reason, we don't have any dues to be a member. It's completely free. So if you want to be a member, and even if you don't live in the state and you want to read our blog, feel free to go to our website and join up, and you can read our blog and participate. We'd love to have you.
Yeah. Another cool thing about our state organization is that we have the opportunity to offer 3 conferences, statewide conferences each year. We have a fall, a spring, and a summer conference. We really are in a good position to bring in great speakers that are pretty relevant to just what school psychs are having to address in our student population currently. So, this April we have Sam Ortiz and Julia Esparza Brown coming to talk about ELL learners and how best to support them. We have a trauma-focused conference that's coming up in Jackson, Wyoming in the summer. So we offer 3 each year. There's pretty decent registration fees, and we just have a good opportunity to meet with our small group across the state 3 times a year, which is pretty cool. So.
It is cool. Yeah. So if you want more information about the state organization or about being a school psych in Wyoming, please visit our website. Again, it's wyschoolpsych.org. And you can contact, if you visit our website, you can contact either of us and ask us any questions you have. We'd love to hear from you. And the more the merrier.
Yeah. Wyoming's a great place to work as a school psychologist. So
absolutely.
You're needed here. Come. Thank you.
Thank you.